Hello and welcome back to the Gonzalez Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell.
And I'm Patrick Gonzalez.
Patrick, for the past 3 weeks or so, I've been away on vacation. My wife made me go to Italy and have all kinds of good things to eat and such. And now that I'm back, I need to catch up on things. So, what's going on, my brother?
Clay, in the Middle East recently, longtime adversaries, Jews and Arabs, came together in an historic moment of reconciliation after decades of brutal conflict. But meanwhile, here in Washington, D.C., Democrats and Republicans can't even agree on keeping the lights on and the pay toilets open in the Capitol. Clay, what is at the root of this intransigence in our body politic today? Please tell me.
Patrick, in all honesty, I think it's ego, and you're either on Team R or you're on Team D. There's no in between. And my view is I see that what is proposed is a clean continuing resolution, a clean CR, where they're continuing the spending levels of the federal budget at the same level as it was during the Biden administration. It was voted on before, it passed. I don't get it, my friend. It seems to me, and admittedly, I'm a Republican and I may and am biased. This is to buy time to give us 7 or 8 weeks to work out a real budget. And you're voting against Democrats, the budget that you voted for before, in order to hold the country hostage to get all of these extra things put in the budget. For instance, they want to put back subsidies for Obamacare or the American or the Affordable Care Act that sunsetted under the prior law at the end of this year. They want to put those back. That's COVID spending. And if you want to continue COVID spending and go and increase the baseline of spending, we are never, ever going to get out of this budget mess. And within 7 years, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare are insolvent. I don't get it. My advice to Washington is get back, get to work, and get this resolved. Patrick, what do you say?
Well, Clay, I have been a Democrat since the day I turned 18, which unfortunately was over 50 years ago. And I also, I mean, all that's being asked right now is let's just keep everything as it was. No sort of filling up some agreement that's got my pet projects. Let's just go back to the way it was September 30th. And we got another deadline coming up in 5 or 6 weeks. We're going to have to deal with anyway, but at least let's talk. So why it's that way? I mean, somebody is making the political calculation that it inures to their benefit to do this. I don't see it. I don't get it. It seems like, I was thinking, Clay, when you and I were youngsters,
50 years ago.
50 years ago, to understand life or to experience life, you actually had to go out and experience life. I mean, yeah, you could get on a phone from your kitchen and call someone, but you had to go out to interact with people. And for a while now, 10, 20 years, you don't have to do that anymore. And I just think it's created sort of, for many, a life totally driven by emotion. And there's no grounded foundation. Henry David Thoreau said 175 years ago, the mass of humans lead lives of quiet desperation. And that's as true today as it was then, as it was 200 years before then. However, the human spirit needs to interact with one another. And it just seems like, the technical revolution that we have undergone the last 20 plus years, I think it's got tremendous, tremendous opportunity and potential. But it also has the potential to create great harm. And I think that's we've got to get a hold of that. But back to the problem. Something's got to give, dude. Something at some point politically, it's got to give, and the way it gives, as it did last November, when the general consensus through the popular vote, through the swing states, all went toward Trump. Now, that was then. Trump was the candidate then. Trump will no longer be the candidate. He loves, dweedling the Dems with Trump 2028, but that's not going to happen.
No.
And but somehow we got to get this. We're doing a pretty good job externally with our place in the world, but we've got to do a much better job internally, getting our ship sort of back in balance.
I see total dysfunction.
Ah,
And I know people always say there's dysfunction in Washington, but I hear rumors that Chuck Schumer is scared that he's going to be primaried by AOC. Then get a primary, man. You got to think of the country first and get things back in order and worry about the primary later. If you're going to allow, and I talk to the Republicans too, if you're going to allow the fringe, what I call the red zones of both parties to control everything, we are never going to get back together. I think there is a consensus of, if it's a football field, that middle 60 yards where everybody could get together and sort of agree on things and come together and solve problems. I saw today Speaker Johnson reading off a list of some absolutely mind-boggling expenditures proposed in this budget. For instance, I think the number is $20 million for locust control in South Africa. I don't know what that has to do with the United States, but that's $20 million of your and my money going to something that has nothing to do with the United States of America. And that was just one of a dozen or more examples he gave. Now, I think the middle of the road Americans can say, that's crazy. What are we doing? If we're facing insolvency with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, we need to make sure that people who truly deserve to be on those programs are on those programs, and to reform it so that it extends its life. I remember, I think it was 1986, 87, when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, Democrat and Republican, but both good Irishmen, got together in the White House. They had a few Scotch whiskeys together, and they worked things out, and they extended the Social Security program 50 years, which is practically where it is now.
Yep.
We have to come up with something, my friend, and this stupid spending on both sides on pet projects has to end. Even though it's small amounts, eventually you lead into some billions of dollars, which is real money. But they got to get back to work and work on a real budget. Do the CR for 6-8 weeks and go back and talk about a real budget, which we haven't had for a long, long time.
I know. We've been kicking the can down the road for decades. And, when it comes to things like, you talk about Chuck Schumer. I mean, every time I've seen Chuck Schumer for the last 30 years on television, he's always reading from a piece of paper. And my immediate thought 30 years ago and my immediate thought today is he's reading something someone else wrote. Think for yourself. And I can give him some cheap political advice. The way the Democratic Party has kind of moved so far left, no matter what he does vis-a-vis this shutdown or regardless, his tenure as Senate Minority Leader, he's likely going to lose. If AOC decides to challenge him, he's likely going to lose that primary.
Yeah.
Uh, so, at some point, you got to say to yourself, okay, it is what it is. I think I'm going to try to do what's right. And Chuck's got to come to the kind of understand what is right. And maybe he's been sort of a programmed automaton for his entire political career, and he's incapable of doing that. But at some point, you just got to say, "Hey, enough of the silly games," um, and try to do that. I hold no hope that that's going to happen. I see the relationship between the parties in this country not moving toward reconciliation like what just happened in the Middle East at all. It's going to drift further and further apart. And until the Democratic Party um, kind of retethers itself somewhat to reality, somewhat to logic, and gets away from the insanity they've been chasing for a while now, I, I, I just, I don't see a happy ending.
Here's something I never thought I'd say. Now, on our Republican side, we have fringe guys. I don't name one. Rand Paul.
Right.
He has not been with the president, even when he tries to propose some centrist things. He's just against whatever it is. I get it. But believe it or not, when someone says, who is the center of gravity in Congress for the Democratic Party? It's not Hakeem Jeffries. It's not Chuck Schumer. In my view, the center of gravity is Baltimore's own Nancy Pelosi. And I never thought I would say this. I disagree with a lot of her policies. But as Speaker, she knew how to keep the troops in line and she knew how to get things passed through Congress. I don't think these other Democrats do. Uh, I don't want to say we want Nancy Pelosi back as the leader of the Democratic Party, but I'm saying we want Nancy Pelosi back as a leader of the Democratic Party because she brought some sort of common sense to that wing of the Democratic Party. She's not for AOC and the squad and all that. And I've seen her on television saying as such. She's for more center left, even more center left views of how the country should run. I don't agree with a lot of that, but at least it brought some sort of a semblance of logic and common sense to the process. When you're talking now, if I'm talking about the real center of gravity for the Democratic Party, it's this guy Mondami up in New York City, which I think is a total disaster for the Democratic Party. And if I was to give them advice, I'd say you all got to do something about this guy because he is going to pull you way far left, way towards the communist end of the left part of the spectrum and totally ruin the party. I think you need to adjust back to a Nancy Pelosi sort of political philosophy versus this other crazy stuff. But that's just me, Patrick. Nobody asked me. That's just my view, and I may be wrong.
Well, I mean, I think I would probably disagree a little, not just because Nancy Pelosi is 85 years old, but I don't think it would work anymore because I think that group that kind of is in charge, it's when I say in charge, just sort of the energy. They're so driven by the lunatics of the party out on the street, creating the energy, creating the money. Where that comes from, I don't have a clue. That I don't think Nancy Pelosi, even at her best day, could corral that group. I think I don't think any one human being could, because someone who stood up and said, "This is what we need to do," would be excommunicated from the party. So again, until I see a sign that um, the party is survivable, I just see it continually on a steady decline. Now we're going to have a couple of elections coming up in 3 weeks that'll give us a sense of what's going on. The two gubernatorial races, the one in New Jersey and the one in Virginia.
Right.
But I'm telling you, brother, if Republicans win both of those governor's races, the decline for the party of Jefferson and Jackson is going to increase at a rate that's going to blow our minds.
I just hope we regain a loyal opposition. Maybe not Nancy Pelosi, but someone in that ilk, someone in that vein comes back. A Sam Nunn from
dude,
Georgia from years ago.
We're focusing on the wrong thing. It's just like those that focus on Trump. It has nothing to do ultimately with Trump. It's what he tapped into. And in the same way, it's not the person. The person does not, it is to solve the Democrats' problem. It is a party, in my opinion, that's in such deep decline that I don't see any way out other than going ultimately the way of the Whigs, as they did in the 1850s, to be replaced by the Republicans with the election of Abe Lincoln in 1860. But I guess I'm kind of depressed and discouraged. I really don't see much hope for the party. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know.
Well, as a Republican that's lived almost 63 years, that has been through election after election after election, you know as well as I do, brother, the pendulum swings right and the pendulum swings left. Right now it's swinging right. And we just got to find that center of gravity that brings the country together. And I agree with you that they brought the Arabs and Israel together in the Middle East. They've struck something kind of a deal there that I didn't think would happen in my lifetime. But you're right. Washington can't get out of its own way. It can't come together, and they know the right answers to these problems. They just don't want to do it for fear of alienating the extremes of their party. And I just think that's a shame, Patrick.
Well, if they don't want to do it for fear of alienating anyone, then that's just weakness at its base. And weakness is not what this country was founded on. Weakness is not what's gotten us through 200 and almost 50 years. And if that's the case, and it is the case, then, God help us. I have faith that this is all going to work out. I don't have a clue what shape or form it takes. But I think 250 years from now, when you and I are doing this podcast, getting ready to tell our 500th year as a country, we're going to be rocking and rolling, brother. And you and I are still going to be going back singing them songs from Woodstock and Monterey. Yeah.
It's a groovy scene, baby.
Oh, baby.
It's a groovy scene.
It's going to be super groovy.
Well, Patrick, I think we've solved all the problems we can do for today. And I'm afraid to tell you that this podcast will self-destruct in 3, 2, 1.